topic of discussion is JVP and its waveforms and the abnormalities. Now let us see the waves in JVP. A JVP consists of a positive waves, A wave, C wave and V wave, and negative in the form of X descent and Y descent. Whenever pressure within atria increases or rise in pressure within atria gives positive waves, fall in pressure gives negative waves. Now let us see each wave in detail. First positive wave is A wave, followed by a descent, then interrupted by C wave, then again a positive wave and a negative wave. So this wave is called A wave, this is C wave, this is V wave, this is X descent and this is Y descent. So suppose heart, so this is vena cava and this is right atrium. So let us see about A wave. What happens here is whenever atria contracts. So whenever atria contracts, so they contract. So whenever atria contracts, it becomes small, and also these orifices are pushed together, or there is some amount of pressure on the orifices of the vena cava causing a rise in pressure. So this pressure will appear as A wave. Now after contraction, atria will relax. This relaxation appears like a descent. This descent is further interrupted by, now see here. Now we have seen the atrial relaxation, and this is the tricuspid wall, and this is the right ventricle, and this is the pulmonary artery. Now when the atria is relaxed, now what happens? Next phase is ventricular contraction. When this ventricle contracts, so it is becoming small, it causes bulging of tricuspid walls into the right atrium. So already initially tricuspid walls were like this. Now when the ventricles contract, they will get bulged inside. So this causes again rise in pressure within the atria, causing a positive deflection, that is C wave. So this is A wave and this is C wave. Now when the pressure increases in the right ventricle, at some point of time, these semilunar walls open. When these semilunar walls open, blood flows in this direction. So whenever blood flows in the direction, the pressure is relieved and these walls will come to its normal position. Again, when they come to normal position, there is again fall in blood pressure. So this accounts to the X descent. Whenever blood is flowing from right ventricle to pulmonary artery, here the tricuspid valves are closed. Some amount of venous filling occurs into the atria. This is characterized by a positive wave, V wave. This is the positive V wave. When again pressure buildups within the atria, tricuspid valves are opened and the pressure gets decreased and blood will flow into the right ventricle. So nothing. So whenever atria is filled with blood, it is in high pressure area. So it has to transmit the blood to the next chamber. So the valves open, blood is transmitted. So this is the A wave, this is C wave, this is V wave, and here is the Y descent. Now let us see once again all the waves in detail. So coming to A wave, as discussed, it is due to atrial contraction. Then C wave. C wave is resultant due to closure of tricuspid wall and bulging into atria. V wave, it is due to venous filling. So easy to remember. A for atrial contraction, C for closure, V for venous filling. Now X descent. So initially this is A wave and there is a descent, it is interrupted by C wave and again it continues as X descent. So this descent is due to relaxation of atrium. Relaxation of atrium and normal position of tricuspid wall. That is, after bulging inside, again when the semilunar walls open, these leaflets will come to its normal position, resulting in X descent. So X descent is, this is the thing happening. So now Y descent. So Y descent. So something it appears like, so T also I am writing it like this. So this is tricuspid opening, resulting in ventricular filling. So remember, during atrial contraction we are getting A wave. Closure of tricuspid wall and bulging into atria we are getting the C wave. Venous filling we are getting the V wave. X descent, relaxation of atria and coming to normal position of tricuspid wall. Y descent, tricuspid wall opening resulting in ventricular filling. So this is the normal waveforms of JVP. Now let us see the abnormal waveforms of JVP and pathologies where they occur. First one is, let us see A wave. So A wave, it is due to atrial contraction, narrowing of orifices and transmission of pressure. First one, absent A wave. For a wave to get generated, there should be effective atrial contraction. Remember, in atrial fibrillation, the rate of atrium is very high and the contractions are ineffective. So absent A wave is seen in atrial fibrillation. As the contractions are ineffective, many n number, they cannot generate A wave. Giant A waves. Whenever atria tries to contract more, so whenever there is an obstruction or whenever there is an impedance to flow of blood, there will be giant A wave. So the obstruction can be at this level in the form of tricuspid stenosis, right atrial myxoma, or there can be resistance here also. So this resistance can be transmitted backward. So resistance to pulmonary stenosis. So here resistance is here. Pulmonary arterial hypertension. Then what is cannon A wave? Nothing but these are very giant A waves. Seen in AV dissociation and atria trying to contract against closed tricuspid wall. The giant wave occurs when there is only a small opening. Very giant wave occurs when there is no opening at all. So it can also be seen in ventricular tachycardias, junctional rhythms, so tachyarrhythmias and ectopic pacemakers. So to remember absent A wave, remember in AF, giant A wave, tricuspid stenosis, right atrial myxoma, pulmonary stenosis, pulmonary arterial hypertension, cannon A waves, AV dissociation, atria trying to contract against closed tricuspid wall. Now coming to X descent. A prominent X descent is seen in constrictive pericarditis, cardiac tamponade and restrictive cardiomyopathy. Obliteration of X descent. So we have discussed that X descent is due to relaxation or the walls coming to its normal position. When there is obliteration, So atria should relax to produce a good X-descent. When there is tricuspid regurgitation. During ventricular systole, blood flows backwards and there will be no decrease in pressure within the atria, no relaxation. So X-descent, prominent X-descent in constrictive pericarditis, cardiac tamponade and obliteration in tricuspid regurgitation. Remember, though filling is affected, relaxation of atria will be there, resulting in a prominent X-descent. Now coming to V wave. Whenever there is more amount of filling within the atria, suppose severe tricuspid regurgitation, what happens? Blood flows backwards and atria will be filled of tricuspid wall. Also some amount of ASD, that is left to right shunt. So from the left side blood is coming into the right atrium, increase the filling of right atrium causing a more prominent V wave. Now let us see Y descent. So we have discussed Y descent is due to opening of tricuspid wall and flow of blood into right ventricle. So whenever there is good flow into the right ventricle, Y descent will be normal. Whenever there is impedance or whenever there is abnormal flow, there will be derangement in Y descent. In this we have to remember how is Y descent in constrictive pericarditis, how will it be in cardiac tamponade. Suppose this is a heart with a band of constriction. The important thing to remember in constrictive pericarditis is there will be ventricular filling up to the elastic limit. Further that the ventricular filling will be abrupted. So nothing but, suppose this is a normal heart and up to here is the elastic limit and further it can stretch a little. In constrictive pericarditis, blood will flow only up to this elastic limit and there will be no flow further. So what is it up to elastic limit? RV filling happens, later no filling. So initially there is filling into right ventricle causing rapid Y descent or prominent Y descent. So what you have to understand here is ventricular filling is initially more until the elastic limit is reached. So there will be a rapid Y descent. What happens in cardiac tamponade? So something is compressing the heart. Let it be fluid. So what happens here is there will be complete obstruction to right ventricular flow. The pressure will be so much that it will not allow the ventricles to expand to accommodate the blood. So this is nothing but ventricles can expand only up to an extent, so it can accommodate blood in the initial phases, resulting in rapid Y descent. Here what happens, even in the initial phases, ventricles cannot accommodate any blood, so there will be absent Y descent. Very, very important this concept. In constrictive pericarditis, there is prominent X descent but prominent Y descent. In cardiac tamponade, there is prominent X descent but absent Y descent. The reason is here total obstruction to blood flow, here partial obstruction. In the initial phase, blood enters, then later it doesn't enter. Coming to another important thing, what is Kusumal sign and what is pulsus paradoxus? Kusumal sign is nothing but rise in JVP in spite of inspiration. So what is this? So what happens to JVP during inspiration? During inspiration, pressure within the thoracic cage decreases or increase of negative intrapleural pressure. So this is thoracic cage. It contains heart and it contains lungs. So what happens is this pressure will become more negative during inspiration. So that's why blood from the vena cava can flow easily. So JVP usually rises when there is any obstruction to flow. Now, due to pressure difference, during inspiration, blood can flow very easily into the heart. So JVP during inspiration should fall. In inspiration, due to negative pressure, blood flow increases and JVP should fall. But what happens in constrictive pericarditis? There is resistance to ventricular filling due to band of constriction. So this is the thing happening. The heart is surrounded by a constrictive tissue. So it is not elastic. So there will be resistance to blood flow into the heart even during inspiration. So in inspiration, the rise in JVP will be present. So that is the thing happening in constrictive pericarditis. So Kussmaul sign is nothing but rise in JVP in spite of inspiration. Usually the physiology is during inspiration the JVP should fall. But in constrictive pericarditis where there is more resistance to ventricular filling, the JVP will not fall, it will remain the same or it will be increased. So here Kussmaul sign is related to JVP in inspiration. Pulsus paradoxus. So this is related to systolic BP in inspiration. So what happens in pulsus paradoxus? So let us see what happens to BP in inspiration. Suppose this is the heart within the thoracic cage. During inspiration, as we have discussed here, there will be more amount of negative intrapleural pressure, resulting the pulmonary circulation or the pulmonary circuit of blood will become a compliant thing. So what happens is, we know that the supply to left atrium is from pulmonary veins. From the right atrium or from the right ventricle, it goes out to pulmonary artery. So what you have to remember is, the pulmonary circulation during inspiration, it becomes a compliant chamber. That is, it tries to hold all the blood within itself. What does it indicate is, during inspiration, blood will be pulled within the pulmonary veins. So there will be less amount of blood flow into the left atrium. It implies less amount of blood flow into the left ventricle. So within the lungs, blood remains. So less amount of blood comes into left atrium. Less amount of blood reaches the left ventricle. Less amount of blood will be ejected. So during inspiration, SBP can fall by 3 to 5 mm Hg. So why is it? Because pulmonary circulation becomes more compliant, holds the blood, not allowing very much blood into the left atrium. So less amount of blood coming into left ventricle and less amount of ejection fraction, less systolic BP. What happens in cardiac tamponade? Now during inspiration, so there will be more amount of, suppose if there is more amount of venous return, blood is entering into the right atrium. Suppose the blood is also entering into the right ventricle, and also from the pulmonary veins less amount of blood is coming into left atrium. Now what happens here is, when the blood enters into the right ventricle, usually when the heart is within the elastic pericardium, suppose when the blood within the right ventricle increases, Suppose the septum goes like this due to increased load of blood within right ventricle. In normal heart, it can compensate or it can move aside. But in cardiac tamponade, there will be interventricular dependence, and this cannot move to compensate the interventricular dependence due to pooling up of fluid. So what happens is, already the flow is decreased on left side during inspiration, and also when the right ventricle is filled with blood, there will be interventricular dependence. This septum is bulging into the left ventricle, causing low ejection fraction or low cardiac output. So the BP will decrease. So fall in BP more than 10 mm Hg during inspiration is pulsus paradoxus seen in cardiac tamponade, COPD, bronchial asthma. So very important. Now let us see the differences between constrictive pericarditis and cardiac tamponade. Constrictive pericarditis, prominent X-descent. Cardiac tamponade, prominent X-descent. Here rapid Y descent. Here absent Y descent. Here Kusumal sign will be present. Here you can see pulsus paradoxus. The problem is, very rarely pulsus paradoxus can also be seen in constrictive pericarditis. So there will be an overlap, but usually for remembering sake we remember Kusumals as a sign of constriction, C and K. Constriction, Kusumal constriction. So this completes JVP and wave.